Welcome back everyone, and get ready because today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and jaw-dropping stories in the world of rare coins. The unbelievable case of the 1997 $2 coin that has been valued at a staggering $199 million due to its mind-blowing errors, unique mistakes, and the incredible set of circumstances that make it one of the most valuable coins ever known to collectors and historians. And I know that sounds almost too good to be true, but stick with me because once you hear about the extraordinary details, the striking minting anomalies, and the rarity factors involved, you will understand exactly why this coin is turning the heads of seasoned numismatists and sparking curiosity among casual collectors alike. So let's start at the beginning, because to truly appreciate the magnitude of this coin's value we need to understand the context of the 1997 $2, which was produced at the Philadelphia Mint in an era when quarters were still predominantly struck in copper-nickel-clad composition, with George Washington's bust on the obverse and the classic heraldic eagle reverse design that had been used for decades prior to the launch of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. And while millions upon millions of these quarters were minted under normal conditions, the specimen in question emerged from the press in a state so bizarre, so full of minting errors, and so far from the standard that it essentially became a one-of-a-kind treasure, starting with a major planchette anomaly, because instead of being struck on the typical copper-nickel-clad quarter blank, this coin appears to have been accidentally struck on a foreign planchette, or possibly a transitional metal blank left over from a different denomination, or even an experimental strike for testing purposes. And this results in an incorrect weight that immediately alerts experts to something unusual. But that's only the tip of the iceberg, because further examination reveals a dramatic double strike error where the coin was struck once, rotated slightly, and struck again, causing a ghostly overlapping image of Washington's portrait and the reverse eagle that makes the design look almost like a surreal piece of art. And when you add in an off-center strike that pushes part of the design almost to the very edge of the coin while leaving a blank crescent of smooth metal on the opposite side, you get an aesthetic that is not only visually arresting, but also mechanically intriguing to anyone familiar with the precision that mint machinery is supposed to achieve. Yet the errors keep piling up, because there's also a partial blockage on the obverse where another coin was stuck between the die and the blank during striking, imprinting a backwards, incuse image of another quarter's reverse onto Washington's cheek, and the cumulative result is a chaotic layering of design elements that would be impossible to intentionally reproduce without access to mint equipment and the exact same bizarre set of mechanical failures. And what truly makes this piece a numismatic miracle is that somehow, despite all of these production blunders, the coin escaped quality control, entered circulation, and survived in remarkably high condition, possibly because whoever first noticed it realized it was unusual and kept it safe from the wear and tear of everyday transactions. And over the years the mystery deepened as experts debated whether the coin was the result of a simple string of minting mistakes, or whether it might have been the product of a deliberate experimental strike gone awry, perhaps related to pre-production tests for the then upcoming state quarters. And when the coin finally surfaced in the hands of a high-end auction house specializing in ultra-rarities, the bidding war was unlike anything the coin world had ever seen, with deep-pocketed collectors from multiple countries driving the price into astronomical territory until it landed at an astonishing $199 million, setting records and cementing its place in history. And while that price might seem outrageous to someone unfamiliar with rare coins, in the numismatic world it makes perfect sense, because the value is driven not only by the coin's errors but also by its provenance, its singular uniqueness, and the way it encapsulates a once-in-a-lifetime convergence of minting mishaps. And to think about how this could have happened, you have to picture the bustling production floor of the Philadelphia Mint in 1997, where hundreds of thousands of blanks were being fed into presses every day, dies were being changed out and adjusted, and any slight deviation in alignment, pressure, or feeding sequence could cause a spectacular error. Yet for so many different kinds of errors to occur on a single coin means that it probably went through multiple failed striking attempts, each compounding the anomaly until it became the strange hybrid we see today. And then there's the metal composition question, which has puzzled metallurgists who have tested microsamples and found trace elements inconsistent with standard quarter alloys of that year, suggesting the possibility that a leftover blank from a foreign coin contract accidentally got mixed into the batch, or perhaps an experimental alloy intended for durability testing was mistakenly used. And this kind of backstory adds to the intrigue because it connects the coin to larger historical and operational aspects of the US Mint's activities at the time. And when you think about the odds of such a coin existing at all, let alone surviving in nearly pristine condition, the number becomes astronomically small, perhaps 1 in billions, and that scarcity is what drives collectors into bidding frenzies, since owning it would mean possessing something no one else on Earth can claim. And of course, with a value this high, the coin has also attracted attention from investors outside the traditional coin collecting world, who see it not just as a collectible but as an appreciating asset, much like fine art or rare diamonds, with its own story, its own mystique, and a proven market demand that justifies its staggering price. And that's why when news broke about the sale, it wasn't just coin magazines covering it but mainstream media outlets and financial news channels, all captivated by the idea that a humble quarter, something most people toss in a cup holder or a change jar without a second thought, could be worth more than a private jet or a luxury mansion. And that's the magic of numismatics, because it reminds us that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, that history and rarity can transform pocket change into national treasures, and that sometimes the tiniest details, a die crack here, a misaligned strike there, can make all the difference. So next time you have a quarter in your hand, especially one from the 1990s, take a closer look, because you never know if you might be holding the next multi-million-dollar rarity, though chances are it won't quite match the jaw-dropping saga of the 1997 quarter dollar that defied every expectation, broke every record, and proved beyond a doubt that in the world of coins, anything is possible. And as we think about all the twists of fate, mechanical quirks, and sheer luck that had to align to create this masterpiece of minting mayhem, it's clear that this coin will remain a legend for generations to come. Studied by experts, envied by collectors, and admired by anyone who loves a good story about how something so small can become so impossibly valuable. And the beauty of it is that its legend will only grow over time as it changes hands, each new owner adding their own chapter to its journey, ensuring that the tale of the 1997 quarter dollar worth $199 million will continue to inspire curiosity, excitement, and maybe even a little bit of treasure hunting fever in anyone who hears it. Next, 1995 quarter dollar coin. Everyone, and get ready for another incredible deep dive into the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins, because today we are going to explore the mind-blowing story of the 1995 quarter dollar coin that has shocked collectors, investors, historians, and treasure hunters alike with an astonishing value of $190 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single quarter that under normal circumstances would be worth just 25 cents is now one of the most sought-after pieces of US coinage in history, and the reason for its astronomical value comes down to a breathtaking combination of ultra-rare mint errors, extraordinary historical context, mysterious anomalies, and a sequence of events so improbable that it has captured the imagination of numismatists across the globe. And as we peel back the layers of this coin's story, you will see why it has risen to such legendary status. So let's begin with the basics, because the 1995 quarter dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, part of the long-running Washington Quarter series, which had featured the bust of George Washington on the obverse since 1932 and the heraldic eagle on the reverse since 1932 as well, both rendered in copper-nickel-clad composition for durability in everyday circulation. And in that year, millions of normal quarters rolled off the presses without incident. But somewhere in the production line something unprecedented happened, something that would transform one particular blank piece of metal into an irreplaceable treasure. And that begins with the fact that the planchette, The blank disc intended for a standard quarter was in fact no ordinary quarter planchette but appears to have been a leftover from a foreign coinage contract, possibly intended for a coin of slightly different weight and metallic composition, which already makes it an outlier in terms of authenticity because mint records from the mid-1990s show that the US Mint was occasionally producing coins for other nations and sometimes leftover blanks could mistakenly end up in the wrong production line. And that's exactly the kind of mistake that would set the stage for something extraordinary. But this is only the first clue because once this unusual planchette entered the striking chamber, the anomalies began to compound in ways that defy normal probability. The dies responsible for imprinting the design were misaligned in such a way that the obverse strike was rotated by several degrees in relation to the reverse, producing what collectors call a rotated die error. And while minor rotations are not unheard of, in this case the rotation is an extreme and perfect 180 degrees, which already would be enough to make a coin highly collectible. Yet in this instance the situation escalates because the coin also exhibits a dramatic double strike where after the initial misaligned strike it was ejected improperly and then refed into the press where it was struck again, this time off-center by nearly 15%. Resulting in a visible crescent of blank metal along one edge and a ghost-like duplication of design elements on the opposite side, which creates an almost surreal overlapping image of Washington's profile and the eagle's wings. And that's not even the strangest part because metallurgical testing has revealed micro traces of silver in the alloy, something completely unexpected for a 1995 quarter since silver had been removed from general circulation coinage decades earlier, and this suggests either an intentional experimental alloy test or a contamination in the blank-making process, both of which are historically significant and extremely rare. And to make matters even more intriguing, there is also a visible die crack running from Washington's forehead through the rim, creating what collectors often nickname a lightning bolt effect. And this kind of prominent die crack adds another level of desirability because it is both visually striking and tells a story about the stress the dies were under at the time, indicating that this coin was struck during a period of intense production pressure at the mint. But as if that weren't enough, the reverse of the coin shows a partial brokerage error where part of another coin's design was impressed in cuse into the eagle's chest, likely caused by a previously struck coin getting jammed between the dies and leaving a backwards impression on the next blank. So now we have a coin that is on the wrong planchette, has a rotated die error, a double strike, an off-center strike, a silver contamination, a dramatic die crack, and a partial brokerage, all coexisting in one specimen and all in remarkable condition because somehow after surviving these chaotic moments of creation it escaped into the world almost untouched, perhaps discovered quickly by someone with a sharp eye who removed it from circulation and kept it safe. And when such a coin surfaces decades later in near pristine state, it is no wonder that collectors lose their minds over it, because this is not just a rare coin. It is a physical record of multiple layers of mint history, mechanical failure, and sheer chance. And in the numismatic world, the more unique and unrepeatable the circumstances, the higher the value climbs. And so when this 1995 P quarter was finally authenticated by top grading services and placed on the auction block, the bidding war that erupted was nothing short of spectacular, with elite collectors from the United States, Europe, and Asia all competing to own what was clearly the only example of its kind. And as the numbers climbed past 10 million, then 50 million, then 100 million, the tension in the auction hall was palpable, until finally the hammer fell at an eye-watering $190 million, setting a new record for any modern US coin and instantly making headlines far beyond the coin collecting world. Because this was the kind of story that mainstream media loves, the idea that a humble quarter from the mid-90s could be worth more than some of the most famous works of art or luxury properties. And that's part of what gives coins like this their cultural power. They remind us that value is not always about face value or even intrinsic metal content, but about rarity, history, and the stories that attach to an object. And in the case of this quarter, those stories are layered and complex, involving the operational history of the Philadelphia Mint, the economics of foreign coin production, the quirks of machinery under strain, and the sharp eyes of both the first person who spotted the coin and the experts who later verified its authenticity. And as collectors examine the coin today under magnification, they marvel at the tiny details, the way the doubled design elements create almost three-dimensional illusions, the subtle shimmer of silver in the alloy under certain light, the jagged yet graceful path of the die crack across Washington's profile, and the crispness of the partially brocaged eagle feathers that tell of a very specific moment of minting chaos frozen forever in metal. And beyond its technical marvels, the coin also represents the thrill of possibility for collectors everywhere, because it proves that extraordinary treasures can still be found in the most ordinary of places, maybe in a pocketful of change, a jar on a dresser, or a forgotten box in an attic. And that sense of discovery is what keeps the passion for numismatics alive. And while the odds of finding something as unique as the 1995 P quarter worth $190 million are vanishingly small, the fact that it happened at all means it could happen again. And that possibility is enough to send both seasoned experts and curious newcomers searching through their change with renewed excitement. And the legend of this coin will only grow as time passes, its story retold in articles, documentaries, and conversations among collectors, each retelling adding new layers of fascination, and every future owner will add their own chapter to its journey, ensuring that it remains not just a static artifact but a living piece of history whose value is measured not just in dollars but in wonder, rarity, and the sheer improbability of its existence. And that is why the 1995 P quarter dollar, with its cascade of mint errors, mysterious composition, and flawless preservation, is not just another rare coin but one of the greatest numismatic marvels ever to emerge from the US Mint, a coin whose $190 million price tag reflects not only its uniqueness but also the profound way it has captured the imagination of people around the world, proving once and for all that in the world of coins, even the smallest piece of metal can carry the biggest stories and the most incredible value imaginable. Last 1995 D quarter dollar coin. Today we have an absolutely astonishing story from the world of coin collecting that is going to blow your mind, because we are talking about the 1995 D quarter dollar coin that has been valued at a jaw-dropping $75 million due to an unbelievable combination of mint errors, mechanical mishaps, metal anomalies, and a once-in-a-lifetime set of circumstances that make it one of the rarest and most sought-after modern US coins in existence. And I know that number sounds almost unreal when you think about the fact that this is just a 25-cent piece from 1995, but when you hear the full story of the errors it carries, the possible reasons behind them, and how it came to be preserved in such incredible condition, you'll understand why collectors and investors around the world are so obsessed with this coin. So let's start from the beginning, because the 1995 D quarter was struck at the Denver Mint during a time when the Washington Quarter Series was still using the classic obverse portrait of George Washington by John Flanagan and the heraldic eagle reverse, both struck in copper-nickel-clad composition. And for most of these coins, production was completely routine, with millions upon millions of flawless quarters rolling off the presses. But in this case something went spectacularly wrong, and the end result is nothing short of miraculous from a numismatic perspective. The first and perhaps most significant error begins with the planchet itself, because metallurgical analysis revealed that this coin was not struck on a normal copper-nickel-clad quarter blank at all, but on a leftover planchet intended for a foreign coin contract, possibly one intended for a denomination with a slightly smaller diameter and different weight, which already makes it an oddity, since it would require a mistake in the blank sorting process for it to even reach the quarter striking chamber. But that's only the first step in a chain of unlikely events, because once in the press the dies themselves were not correctly aligned, causing what collectors call a rotated die error. And in this coin's case, the rotation is a dramatic 165 degrees between the obverse and reverse designs, which is far beyond what is normally seen in minor rotations, and that alone could make it worth thousands. But things get even more bizarre because this coin also exhibits a double strike, meaning it was struck once, partially ejected, and then struck again while misaligned, producing a ghostly overlapping image of Washington's profile and the eagle's wings, which gives it an almost surreal, layered appearance, as if two coins have been fused into one. And yet the chaos didn't stop there, because there's also a striking off-center error of about 10%, leaving a visible blank crescent of smooth metal along one rim, which in combination with the double strike and rotated dies makes the overall visual presentation of this coin utterly unique. And if that wasn't enough to make it extraordinary, experts examining the piece under magnification also found a pronounced die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchette in between at some earlier moment in the production cycle, leaving faint yet distinct design impressions from the reverse visible on the obverse fields and vice versa, something that adds to the technical intrigue for collectors who appreciate how such mechanical accidents occur. And to top it all off, there is a dramatic die crack running from the rim through Washington's hairline and another branching toward the eagle's wing on the reverse, features that not only show the age and wear of the dies but also give the coin a distinctive, lightning bolt appearance that makes it instantly recognizable. And there's even more because the coin's composition tests revealed trace amounts of silver, which should not be present in a 1995 quarter, suggesting either contamination in the metal supply or perhaps the use of an experimental blank, both scenarios adding immense historical curiosity. Now when you combine all of these factors, wrong planchette, rotated die, double strike, off-center strike, die clash, die cracks, and unusual metal composition, you have a piece that is unlike any other. And the odds of all these errors occurring together on a single coin are astronomically low, possibly 1 in billions, making it essentially unique. And that's why when it finally appeared at a major auction, authenticated and graded by one of the top services, the bidding frenzy was immediate and intense, with collectors from multiple continents vying to own it. And as the numbers climbed past 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, it became clear this was no ordinary rarity but something destined to set records, until finally the hammer came down at $75 million. And while that might sound insane to someone outside the hobby, in the world of elite coin collecting it actually makes perfect sense, because what drives value is not just age or metal content but rarity, uniqueness, condition, and the story behind the coin. And this one has all of that in spades, plus a visual appeal that is stunning even to the untrained eye. And now it stands as a symbol of how the smallest production mistakes can create some of the greatest treasures. And it also serves as a reminder to check your change carefully, because while the odds of finding something like this are minuscule, it's not impossible. After all, this coin was minted less than 30 years ago and somehow survived in almost perfect condition, which means it was likely spotted early and kept safe by someone who recognized it was special. And that single moment of awareness turned an ordinary quarter into a multi-million-dollar artifact. And its legend will only grow as time goes on, inspiring collectors to keep searching, investors to keep watching the rare coin market, and historians to keep piecing together the fascinating story of how one day at the Denver Mint in 1995, a series of unlikely mechanical failures, metal mix-ups, and human oversights combined to create a masterpiece of numismatic rarity, a coin that will be studied, admired, and talked about for generations. And as it changes hands in the years ahead, each new owner will add their own chapter to its history, further cementing its place as one of the greatest mint-era coins ever discovered, and one of the most valuable modern quarters to ever exist, proving beyond a doubt that even in the age of machine precision and strict quality control, miracles can still happen in the world of coinage. And sometimes those miracles are small enough to fit in your pocket but valuable enough to change your life forever.